right? So with that, the reality of package selections for a WCXM solution, as it is called today, is really this, which is one, as I mentioned earlier, it's important to note that each solution is not the same, and it's really going to be driven entirely by the business needs and the business requirements. And even though if you are a consultant or a developer or an architect who's worked on multiple CMS projects, you would know that in all likelihood, what you do for one customer is going to be somewhat different from what you do for another customer, purely driven by what their business needs, right? Obviously, there will be reuse at a more technical level. At the same time, the business purpose of why someone is investing in a WCXM solution is very different, right? The other reality of it, as we mentioned earlier, is that given the complexity of capabilities we are asking for, given that we are asking for WCM and DAM and social and personalization and search, it's likely, or rather I should say it's unlikely, that you'll find a single package to deliver the entire comprehensive offering. You are likely to deal with a scenario where you're either talking about integration across products and packages, or you're talking about some sort of a larger vendor suite with multiple different products kind of pre-integrated together for you, right? But it's unlikely that given the breadth of what we've called a WCXM solution that you'll find the answer to all of that within one single package, right? And hence, what you need for your WCXM solution, quite honestly, may not be the same stuff that I need, right? For example, you may have a compelling need to repurpose videos for delivery to multiple channels, including broadcast channels or mobile channels, in which case you probably need some sort of a media management system or a digital asset management system for doing that video processing. I, on the other hand, probably only need to deliver images over the web or something like that, in which case I probably really don't need that investment in a rich media management or a DAM system. And hence, recognizing that differentiation is important. Yeah. The last 2 points are equally important, which is it's important to appreciate that vendors will claim to have similar capabilities or seem to have similar capabilities. And that's even more prevalent if the only thing you're going to tell them is we need multi-site. Probably everyone's going to come back and tell you and say, sure, we can do multi-site. And hence the need to kind of define it more specifically and more contextually. And then finally, given the fragmented landscape, there's a lot of overlapping capability, right? For example, basic ability to manage images and image metadata is something that even many WCM systems can do. At the same time, you could have an advanced digital asset management system that you would deploy to kind of do the same thing or even more. For example, transform images into different renditions for different channels. And so you start to ask yourself the question of saying, okay, that basic image management capability is available in both the packages. Which one do I really need, and do I really need both, and why, right? And then finally, it's important to appreciate that selecting a package is really the start of a long journey. You're essentially making a partnership with a vendor and their package offering, and really once you've selected the package, your journey begins by implementing it, customizing it, deploying it, rolling out multiple online properties on it, and then seeing it through a lifespan of enhancements, platform upgrades, and so on and so forth. And hence, while that decision is critical and important, it's important to realize that it doesn't stop when you select the package, it actually starts when you select the package. So before I go on to the next portion of this, we are about at the 30-minute point in this presentation. Let me take a quick look and see if there's any questions so far in the chat panel, or if anyone has any questions. Otherwise, we can move on. Moderator, can you let me know if there are any questions so far?
No, there are no questions as such right now. You can carry on with the session.
Okay, wonderful. I will continue in that case. Guys, if you have questions, please feel free to post them on the chat panel. There is a chat panel that you can post them. I'll take those at the end of the session, but if you have those in between, feel free to post your questions and we can take them at the end of it. Okay, so this is something we've come up with. We've tried and tested it at a few different places, and it seems to work well for us, which is really a framework for how one would execute such a package selection, right? Okay, so the basic process, as at least we have started to approach it now, is you essentially start by asking the why question, right? And the why question is really understanding the customer's business drivers, which is, so why does our client need a WCXM solution? Why are we doing this? What is the business purpose? Are you trying to increase customer acquisition, gather more customers? Are you trying to build more customer loyalty? Are you trying to drive greater conversion and greater sales through the online channel? Why are you doing this, right? It's always important to start with that why question. After which you kind of answer the what question, which is your business use cases, which is what are you going to use the solution for, and what are the use cases that will be satisfied by the solution. For example, are you looking to deploy marketing campaigns to essentially create campaigns by season, like Thanksgiving versus New Year, or is there an intent to deploy a more permanent product catalog site to showcase your product content, or what is the intent, right? What do you intend to do with it? And then kind of figure out the which, and what I mean by that is what do you need, which capabilities and which building blocks do you need to deliver this solution, and correspondingly which packages can help you, right? And so there's a mapping process in saying, because I need these capabilities, for example, because I need video processing or image processing, therefore I probably need to consider a DAM package or something like that, right? And then finally the hows, right, where you start to kind of get into the more details, and you ask yourself the question of saying, okay, how exactly will this stack be leveraged for my solution? How will users work with it? Also, how will the solution deliver against a given business process, right, and so on and so forth. So there's a bunch of those questions that you ask yourself, right? At a more detailed level, this is kind of the roadmap that we've come up with internally. And I'll let you read through the detail on the slide or look at the recording offline. But at the highest level, what we are essentially saying is that it's very important to approach this process in 3 phases, right? Where you start off by not looking at products, by not looking at technologies, by not looking at packages, but by asking the basic question of what the customer business problem is and why are they trying to invest in a WCXM solution, right? And as you go through that process, what you're really trying to do in phase 1 is really get to a common agreement of saying this is the business problem, here are the key requirements we are trying to deliver against, and correspondingly at the highest level, this is the conceptual view of the solution we need. For example, certain customers may have a strong need to use a WCM solution to engage their customers in conversations. Now, that very statement tells you that fair enough, there's probably going to be a heavy need for a social capability as you approach that. So then you probably prioritize social as one of the key capabilities you're after, right? So it's important to define the business problem so that you can get to a reasonable view of what the customer wants, and correspondingly, what is the nature of solution they're seeking, right? Having done that, you can probably move on to a more rapid assessment and initial recommendation. You can take those capabilities and say, fair enough, let's identify a long list of potential packages and vendors that could deliver on that, and let's rapidly evaluate the capabilities to get to a quick shortlist. And the point is that this exercise must be done rapidly. It's not something that you should spend weeks and weeks on, because the intent of this process is really, or this phase 2, is really to narrow it down to a short list of not more than 2 or 3 packages, or maybe 4 at best, that you can spend more detailed time on evaluating and essentially get to a point where you're then really going into the specific business needs and, as I'll explain in a while, business scenarios, right? So at the end of phase 2, what you would have is you would have gone from a long list of packages to a more short list of packages, right? And say, fair enough, these are the 3 I'm after, right? For example, it could be Adobe Interwoven and something else. In the last phase is really where you take that short list of packages and to take them through a more detailed evaluation. What we recommend is to use a scenario-based evaluation process, right? Which is essentially the ability to say that can we articulate our business needs in the form of real-life scenarios that would describe how our users really work with the system, right? So kind of look at it as a day in the life of a marketer, a day in the life of my customer. How does my customer get into this experience? How does he find the experience? How does he work with the experience? Or a day in the life of a marketer. How do they create content? How do they integrate content with creative assets? How do they deploy content? How do they create personalized experiences? And if you have the ability to articulate that as a scenario, saying this is what we want the solution to deliver, and if you're able to take that scenario as the basis for all your detailed evaluations, whether you're sitting down with a vendor and asking them how their product will deliver, or whether you're doing a vendor demonstration, or whether you're even doing a proof of concept, that scenario can be pretty useful to kind of giving very specific guidance as to how you expect to use the product within your environment. And we'll talk about scenarios in a little bit after this. But approaching it in those 3 phases in our mind is important. And like I said, the biggest start is to make sure you don't jump the gun and don't directly get into technologies, but instead start with the business problem definition, and then you end it with a more detailed scenario-based evaluation of your shortlisted packages. Even though this diagram may not indicate otherwise, you probably want to spend the least amount of time in phase 2, which is the rapid assessment process, because you want to get through that quickly. You want to spend a reasonable amount of time in defining the problem itself, and then of course doing a more detailed scenario-based evaluation for your shortlisted packages. Yeah. The other thing to keep in mind, and we'll talk about this, is there is a ton of industry collateral. I will point you to some of that to help you with phase 2. There's Forrester reports, there's Gartner reports, there's a Real Story Group, and there's several other analyst firms that have data that can be readily used and leveraged to do something like a phase 2, which is to do a rapid assessment, where you really need to, as a consultant, if you're advising a customer, where you really need to play an important role is marrying that data to their business needs and their specific business scenarios and saying, how is this relevant to you? All right. So with that, I'd like to walk you through some basic best practices, as we are calling them, key mantras,